Hi everyone, I'm in Visual Studio Code and we're going to continue the tutorial of arrays. We're going to do even a deeper dive. So let me go to open folder. I'm going to create a folder called arrays2. Select folder. Let me remove my face. Bam. Okay, so new terminal. .NET new console. Alright, under programs we delete the created template. Enable debugging by saying yes. Alright, so first thing we're going to do, we're going to look at the value type versus reference types when it comes to array. Value type versus reference. So I'm going to create struct. Let's call it, it's a public struct. Some values, let's call it. It's going to be so some values have to be capital values. Make it integer based, right? Alright, so when I do something like this, some values, equals new some values. Let's give it 5,000 elements, right? So we know that structs are value based. So when I did this, first we're doing value based, yeah. I could have also done this with the regular integers, but the point I want to make here, when you do this, you actually have allocated 5,000 variables in the memory and make them equal to 0. We know that the default value for integers when declaring array is 0. So when I do something like this, console write line, let's say the 4,999 element of this array is, and then let's just go there, some values. We got to go to we go to one less, because we know that arrays, they start at 1, at 0. Play the value, we have to do that value. Okay, so you see the fourth element of this array is 0. So we have 5,000 entries of 0. Why is this important? Let's say you create an array of, let's say, 1 million, right, elements. So all of a sudden you will have 1 million elements by your program. So you know, this can be a memory hog. We have many users, so you can affect the performance of the system. Let's do something similar, but using a class. So we do public class, some values too. Okay, let's do with C. Public int value, same idea. So this is the same idea, but we're using a class. So for this we have a reference type with classes. So some values. C. And we do the same thing. Okay. So let's put a C here, so we're referencing the same thing. Some value C. Okay, I have an additional S there. Alright, so that should be fine. So let's see what happens here. Alright, so you see what's happening here is that we have sort of like said that we're going to need 5,000 spaces, but unless you actually occupy that space, there's nothing is out there beside a null. So null doesn't have a value. So if I will remove the value here and run this again, you will see what will happen. So it's nothing there. So you will go on some value C 4998 equal new, right? And then you actually stick something in there. So let's put 55, right? So when we do this now, you see, give us a 55. So you sort of like reserved space for it, but until you use it, it's not holding any value. So this way it's more efficient, right? You're not wasting any space. We also have something called multidimensional arrays, which basically are array with arrays inside them. So for example, first element at position 1, first element at position 2, right? So multi-dimensional array. So how do you do them? Okay, so there are two types. There's a rectangular rectangular array, you will specify it like this, for example. And you open brackets, you put a comma in, you give it a name, let's say square. Call it my square. And you specify the dimensions. So you can say quarter of 4. Okay. Or you can call it, yeah, Let's call it my rectangle. It'll be less confusing, so we will not repeat the 4 and the 4. So, alright, so the rectangle will have 4 rows and 3 columns. 4 rows and 3 columns. So just quickly, if you want to loop through the entire rectangle, let's see, and the shortcut here. Okay, so for my rectangle, starting at position 0, the length of my rectangle, get length. So it's the dimensions of the array, right? So get length of the first dimension. So this says, okay, go to the first dimension of the array and loop for every row, right? So looping for every row. I will discuss loops in later lessons in more detail. So for every row, now loop for every column. So we will not have I anymore because it's used. So we have J, J, and J. So we go my rectangle, get length, and this time we go deeper to get the nested values out. So we're looping for every column, right? So we can write our console right line. So we're writing out my rectangle. It's gonna be a row and column. So how many zeros you think we're gonna get? We have 4 rows and 3 columns. We expect to see 12 zeros. So let's run this with F5. You know what, let's just write a console right. So the zeros will be in one line, it will be easier to count. Alright, so hit the right. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you see, that's how you go inside and get all the data out. So these were rectangular arrays. So if you want to initialize your rectangular array, you can do it as follow. So let's say int my rectangle 2. We're going to do it at the same dimension. So you open up curly brackets, and then you basically will list the values. So we have 3 columns per row, so we can go like this: 0, 1, 2. Then we go to the second row, 4, 5, 7. Then we go to the next row, 5, 4, 8. Then we go to the last row. 0, 0, 0. And then we make it a semicolon. All right, so that's how you will initialize a rectangular array. Now we have the jogged arrays. So what's interesting about those multidimensional arrays that you don't have to specify the inner dimensions. So, and their syntax is a little bit different. So you go int, you create double square brackets, some values equals new int, let's say 4 rows, but the third one is unknown. Okay, we have some values already, so some values too. So when you actually going row by row, you will create the size. So some values 2 for row 1 will have new int 2. Right? Some values for row 2 will have 2 columns. Some values for row 3 will have 3 columns, and some values for the row 4 will have 5 columns. So you see that each row will have different amount of columns. So it can get a little bit confusing, but I think this is more efficient than the other one because you're only creating the number of columns that you need. And how would you initialize an array like that? So let me show you. Initializing basically means assigning values at the beginning. So let's see it. So let's create another name, values 3 equal new int 4, same idea. So we're gonna open a curly brackets, and you go like this, new int, and then let's use the same size idea. The first one we have 3, so we will have 0, 1, 2. Then we go to the next row, new int, that one has 2 elements, so let's say 5 and 6. Then we go new int, the brackets. The other one has 4 elements, so we just let's put 4 zeros, and the last one has 6 elements. So we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, and here we go. So you say to yourself, wow, how would we ever display this? So we can do it using the same idea as before. So let me copy and paste that for loop, and then we're just going to do some substitutions. So I paste it here. We're referencing a new array called SumValues3. So let's just replace my rectangle with SumValues3. Okay. What doesn't I like about this? You see, it doesn't like the commas here like that. So you have to do it like this. That's another thing, a different syntax when you want to display them. So let's put every time we switch. So let's write this out. So we will say row number I. So we will know which row we're in, right? So let's run this and let's see what happens. Oh, so it told me that the index is outside of the bounds, so this would not work. Okay, so how we solve this? So using the same scheme will not work for that one because the length is changing. Well, so what we can do is we can do a little thing here. So we can try to do something like this. So we will get into the first the array of the first row and try to get its length. So let's see if this will work. Yep, this works. So we will see that the input is a little messy here. So what we can do here is we will, after a loop we will write a line. So we skip a line. So to make this thing more organized. Alright. So let's see here. So row number 0, we have 0, 1, 2, correct? For row number 1 we have 5, 6, then we have 4 zeros, and then we have 6 ones. This can be rewritten to make it much easier to read. So give me the inner array length. So you can just say length. Get length is it could be used here. So you guys seen it, but it's more confusing if you do it this way, because you only have one static length and the other one changes. So let's just show you that this works the same way. Yeah, there we go. So there is also a ways to shorten up the way array is being initializing. So let's look at this first initialization that we did. I'm going to put it inside comments for reference. So you see how we did it here. So following an idea how the arrays are initialized. So for example, I say int numbers. If I go like this, you guys see, so using the same idea can be applied to the other one. So you would say int for rectangular, another, let's call it shortcut rectangular array, initialization. Okay, so how would this work? So you go like this, let's call it numbers 2, you put an equal sign, and you will start listing them one by one. So you would just say just copy and paste this, because the middle will be the same. So what do we really do here? So we skip this part. So instead of just saying what the data will be, you list the data, and the array will and take care of that for you. But keep in mind, right? So let's say if I would mess up the one of the rows and give the less columns, it will not let me. So you have to make sure that you actually have to list the same amount of columns everywhere. So if you stick an A here, let's loop through it and find out what's going on here, right? So go numbers 2. Okay, let's run this and see what happens. You see the A got changed to an ASCII value. So be careful that you use the same type. Let's look at simplified method for initialization for jagged arrays. So we had jagged arrays right here. This lesson is a little bit longer, but it's a lot of useful information here. So jagged arrays following the same idea as above. So what we can do, we call it some values for. And now we don't say new int, so we are not specifying anything. We let the computer figure it out. So let's start listing them. Same idea as before. So you say new int 0, 1, 2. So it's the same way, except you don't specify the initial size for the rows. Another way to initialize the array is using a var keyword. Var is basically a way that you don't specify the variable type, but you let the data dictate the type of the variable that you're going to use. So when I say var s equals Smith, notice I didn't say string s equals Smith. Smith is being evaluated. The compiler see that this is a string, then it makes s a type of string. This is very useful when you are returning a complex data types and you don't know what that type is. Like for example, nested collection, it's very difficult to know the exact type, so this sort of simplifies it for you. So just to show you, console write line, when I would say s get type, look what happens. If I run it, see, it tells me it's a system string. So it does exactly what I said. So you can use var also with array initialization. So let's try to initialize array using a var keyword. So let's go to our rectangular array. And copy this for reference, so it'll be easier to type. Rectangular array using var keyword. So here you will say var my rectangle 3 equals new int. We don't specify anything. And then we just copy and paste the content. And for Jagged, we will do var, let's say, let's call it Jagged. int So let's copy and paste this. Let's make some alterations to different row sizes. What doesn't like about this? Okay. Yeah. So here we're missing a new int. Let's just change the sizes here. Okay. Not much really saved in terms of a jagged. If you are dealing with just one dimension, var can be even simpler, because you can avoid the type altogether. So let's say var numbers for 3 equal, so numbers already taken. Or you need a new keyword. Okay, so yeah, so you see, you don't specify the type. We'll get the type from the list, but there's one caveat here. So if I go like this and I say, for example, a inside there, let's see what you see. You get an error because it tells you that the sequence have to be of the same type, so you cannot mix different cannot mix different data type. So the below will not be allowed. Lastly, I want to just say that arrays are not checked when you compile in terms of the dimension. So let's say if I create an array, the numbers for, let's say we make it of 5 elements, right? Notice that I can do this and I don't get an error. But when I run this, look what's gonna happen. You see, you get an error that the index was outside the bounds of the array. Danger about this, if you have some sort of an unreachable code at this moment, your program will run fine, but when that piece of code gets hit later and you have an array out of bounds, it will crash. So not easy to debug these things, so that's keep that in mind when working with arrays. So thank you so much for watching. That concludes the arrays. We're going to be diving into other matters next time. So please subscribe, turn notification on so you won't miss the next lesson. All the best. Bye bye.